Thank you, too. I invite us all to join together. There is a third diva, as many of us know, who is not feeling well this morning. So let us together hold Carrie in prayer, knowing that she is the perfect expression of wholeness and strength and well-being, even as we speak. And we bless these two for remaining in perfect balance, no matter what life brings. And so it is. Amen. I mean, don't you think, when you think you have a threesome that you're going to perform together, and you find out you have a twosome, and you go, let's do this. So we have more juicy material today on our topic of living in balance. We've been exploring a dynamic approach for creating harmony and wholeness in a chaotic world. So let's start in review with some of our balance exercises, our standing in balance for those who are willing to come to your feet. We gently plant our feet about shoulder width apart. Place one hand on the lower abdomen and the palm of your hand on your lower spine, and tuck that lower spine and pelvis under, bringing that stomach toward the spine, just gently, not forcing it. And when we do that tuck, it automatically brings our shoulders back, up a little. We bring our shoulder blades together and breathe. Resting in this standing balance. I know I am breathing in. I know I am breathing out. I smile to my in-breath. I smile to my out-breath. Breathing in, I am arriving. And breathing out, I am home. So hopefully some of you over the last few weeks have been incorporating this posture, this don't sit down yet. We have one more fun thing. Incorporating this posture of balance in your life, because it allows for really nice flow in our system. This one I think we did last week. It's called the cross crawl, and it's about a physical balance, and it's also about a mind, body, spirit balance. So we place our arms in front of us about shoulder height, and as we inhale, the right hand comes straight up and the left hand goes down to the side, and exhale the opposite, down and up. And continue that with your breath. Breathing in, right hand up. Exhaling, right hand down. Bringing our left and right brain into balance. And bringing our mind, body, spirit into balance. A couple more breaths. And voila. Now you can sit. Standing in balance, and the cross crawl, balancing right and left brain, mind, body, spirit. Who among us knows that living with a peaceful heart has much to do with emotional intelligence? So some of us have heard the phrase emotional intelligence, EQ. In the ministerial program, we also refer to it as emotional maturity. Our intention today is to get in touch with a golden truth. Emotional intelligence is a multidimensional tool that we can use in order to create a life of living with a peaceful heart. Is there anyone who would turn that opportunity down? The opportunity of having a moment, an hour, a day, living with a truly, truly peaceful heart. There are 5 dimensions of emotional intelligence, or EQ, and here's the first one. It's called mindfulness, which we've been talking quite a bit about in balance, and it's called self-awareness. Here's the truth. In any moment that we can see, relate to, own, understand, and manage our emotions, we are demonstrating emotional intelligence. Yes? If we can see the emotion, if we can name it, if we can understand it, where it's coming from, if we can manage it, we are in that moment demonstrating a quality, a dimension of emotional intelligence. Here's a quote from our authors that really caught me. There is a wisdom in our heart worth listening to for a lifetime. There's a wisdom in our heart worth listening to for a lifetime. One of the pieces that I wear constantly is hand inscribed, and it says, "The best place in the hub of the universe is the heart. Go there and be in it." Ram Dass, many of us are familiar with the writings of Ram Dass. Ram Dass tells us that there are many levels to the heart. That shouldn't come as a surprise to some of the Unity folks, just as there are many levels in consciousness. Now, I think we know that the human heart can be a very fragile thing. We've experienced a breaking heart in the face of utter loss, in the face of deep suffering, and perhaps we've experienced a broken heart in compassion for another. You know, looking out at our world, I feel like I can't help but see deep suffering in much of humankind, in much of our animal kingdom, and on our planet Earth itself. So if we're in a place of living from the heart, I feel like sometimes we can easily be swept clean off our feet and be swept away by this force of overwhelming emotion. Gosh, a movie from decades ago was called Sex, Lies, and Videotapes, and it's Andie MacDowell. The opening scene, the screen is black, and you hear her voice say, "Garbage. What are we going to do with all the garbage?" And sometimes when I lay in bed and let my mind expand beyond my own tiny little universe and our world and our planet and what's going on, and I find myself wringing my proverbial hands saying, what are we going to do with all the garbage? What can I do about that? So this emotional human heart that appears to be breakable, Das says there's a deeper heart. And the deeper heart, he says, looks at the universe. Imagine this. Looks at the universe just as it is and says, so, and yes. Looks at the universe just as it is. from this deeper heart, we can achieve the second dimension of emotional intelligence. And this dimension is about managing our feelings. Is that a project for anybody? For just a couple of us. So maybe there'll be some good tips in there for us, and maybe we can talk to all the other people in the room who don't feel like it's a full-time job managing our feelings and emotions. So Das asks a really interesting question. He said, the thing to look at is, where is our identity? So thinking about the emotional heart, thinking about the deeper heart, do we find ourselves identifying with and reacting to this reality, our relative realm, our earthly realm? Is that what we're calling capital R, real? Because can be viewed as a bubble. This earthly relative plane can be viewed as a bubble within the infinite absolute realm, God realm, God mind, God heart. So Das is calling us to seek a much deeper sense of balance through our ability to see our world from a lens that goes far beyond our human emotional heart. Can you think of a time when you've been consciously aware of the difference? That you're able to be in the midst of a situation, and even though you might be having this physical, mental, emotional, human response to what's going on, there's still a part of us, somehow, somewhere, some way, we are anchored in this deeper heart. We're anchored in this deeper truth. And what this is about is consciously aligning with the heart of our true nature. What Ram Dass calls the deeper heart, I would call God mind in us. I would call spirit presence alive and awake in us and as us. So when we can pull ourselves into our deeper heart, it gives us that delicious millisecond to halt our impulsive, knee-jerk, reactive emotions. Say in the last 24 to 48 hours, have any of us reacted to anyone or anything impulsively? Are there any parents in the room? Are there any folks in the room who live with someone else in their household? If you haven't reacted impulsively in the past 24 to 48 hours, I invite you up here to finish this message. How's that go? He used without sin, cast the first stone. So in that moment of pulling ourselves into that deeper heart, and how I do it always is with the breath. When I feel the trigger moving through my physical body and rising up to my power center and about to express itself in the world, one of the ways I pull myself into the deeper heart is with the breath. Just takes a millisecond to draw that breath, to check our triggers. I'm not reacting to Barb specifically. I'm not reacting to something specific that Barb said. What I'm reacting to is an inner trigger of which I may or may not be aware. But if I can just do that breath and that brief body scan, I can check my triggers. I can soothe my own anxiety. And I'm sure many of us have maybe conscious, maybe unconscious techniques that we use in that moment to soothe our anxiety, to calm our fears, to come back to balance. And in that space, that teeny little space, we can identify our emotion, actually name it. We can express it. We can own it, first of all, before we express it. And we can express it without going at someone. We can express it from a place of I. So this deeper heart that Ram Dass wrote about includes the human heart. Doesn't exclude it. It includes the human heart. And it gives us the ability to be in the midst of very difficult situations and in the midst of what we might call very difficult people without being swept into the undertow of it, without drowning in the very situation. Here are some specific words from Ram Dass. The hardest state to be in, he reminds us, is one in which you keep your heart open to the suffering that exists around you and simultaneously keep your discriminative wisdom. Keep our heart open to the suffering around us and simultaneously keeping our discriminative wisdom. He says, once you understand that true compassion is the blending of the open heart and quiet mind, it's still difficult to find the balance. But, he goes on to say, it's possible. It's possible. And when I read that and sat with that for a few minutes, the image that came to me is the image of Moses on the mountaintop. This is when he's getting the anointment of, get these peeps together that have been in slavery in Egypt for generations, get them together and haul them through the wilderness to the promised land. And in the course of that conversation, this bush is on fire. Moses is in the midst of this. He's in the midst of the great I am presence. Being called upon to see that presence in himself, and he is not consumed by the bush that is on fire. So what we're talking about with this deeper heart, with this emotional intelligence, is a spiritual practice. It's not a momentary flip of the switch. And like any spiritual practice, it takes great intention, yes, and great mindfulness. And don't we realize with some of our spiritual practices that we currently live, that at some point, this practice became who we are. It's sort of like riding a bicycle or driving a car. Do you remember when we used to be hyper-conscious when we were driving? Do you remember, like conscious of everything, where our hands are on the wheel, what speed the car is actually going, the cars around us, the distances and so forth? We are so hyper-conscious until we've learned the pattern, right? And then it becomes part of who we are. So for 2 dimensions so far, we have mindfulness and awareness is our first one. Managing our emotion is a second one. And our third one is about intention. So clearly, in this practice of emotional intelligence and the mindful, balanced heart, our intention determines whether we will react or respond. Do you know the difference? React, unconscious, not thought through, not in touch with. Trigger, something got pushed, something got pulled, something got tripped, and there's a reaction out of us. Sometimes we catch it right after the fact and can make amends. Sometimes we catch it just as it's coming out of our mouth. And for the really emotionally mature of us, we can catch it before it gets to the power center. How powerful is that? To have the ability to manage that. So the way that I interpret this part of this whole message, when I'm thinking about how do I do that? How do I do that in my own life? And one of the things I do, my cough drop is stuck, excuse me. One of the things I do is remind myself. And here's one of the mantras that I use. Always and in all ways, there is an infinite energy beyond me, an energy beyond me that is using me in this earthly situation to be a witness to the heart. We are being breathed. We are being presented with life. We are surrounded by spiritual mirrors, and we have opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to be a witness to someone's heart. What a privilege. What a privilege. And often, for me anyway, it's not, no, that's not true. Erase that thought. It's a sacred moment when we have an awareness that we have gone beyond this reality. We've stepped into this other world, gone beyond our human capabilities in order to be fully present to another. You know, whether it be a great joy, whether it be a crisis, a tragedy, whether it be just an awakening moment, an aha moment. And we realize we're not in ourselves, that we're way far beyond that. And it feels to me like if in that moment, it feels as if I'm giving myself up to the universe. It feels like, you know, you really vibrate with one heart, one heartbeat, one rhythm, one presence, one mind, one spirit. And in that moment, we are in perfect tune with that rhythm, with that heartbeat of the universe. And of course, one of the big things about emotional intelligence is the question, how in touch or out of touch are we with our emotions? Can we identify them? Can we name feeling words and put our actual feelings into words? Here's a real tuning in thing. Can we develop a sensitivity to tuning into how our emotions might be impacting those around us? Can we tune into how someone else's emotions or actions or words might pull our triggers? And in that second, I might think that trigger has everything to do with Nina. Nina's the messenger. That trigger has nothing to do with Nina. It's about what's going on in here. So being in touch with our emotions, being actually able to name them, to own our emotions, to put them to feeling words and manage our emotions are obviously huge components of emotional maturity. I can clearly, this is such a vulnerable job. I can clearly recall the moment that I became aware that I was completely out of touch with my emotions. And of course, it was in the ministerial program. We find out all kinds of fun stuff about ourselves. It was an intensive course. It was called Nonviolent Communication. It's a book by Marshall Rosenberg. So we got the material, and then we were divvied up into little pairs for practice on the material. Simple 4-step communication process for those of you that have studied nonviolent communication. And step number 2 involves naming a feeling, my feeling. So I'm with my partner, we're doing this exercise. Every time I get to step 2, they would say, not a feeling word, not an emotion, not a feeling word. So I was frustrated, that's a feeling word. I was frustrated, I was embarrassed, that's a feeling word. The good news about this, because I know people who live there, if you ask a simple question, how are you feeling? Can we find it? Can we name it? Can we really identify with and own a feeling? So what I did is went to this book, Nonviolent Communication. There are a couple, 2 or 3 pages, lists of feeling words, and I made a Word document and printed them out. And I kept them with me until I trained myself to be back in touch with my own feelings. I think we come into the world knowing how to feel. And I think there's a whole lot of socialization that goes on in our family system about feeling. Anybody ever been told, oh, don't feel that way? Or to a small child, what are you crying about? You have nothing to cry about. Or here's a good one, particularly in terms of expressing anger. Oh, we don't do anger here. That's not mature. That's not polite. So for many of us, there is a road back to actually getting in touch with human emotion. Our 4th dimension, mindfulness awareness, managing our emotion, our intention. Our 4th dimension is empathy. And I want to be clear about empathy because, again, in the ministry, we're taught very distinctly about empathy, about sympathy, about our ability to allow someone to be in their own emotion and to not have to take that away from them, to not have to, they're there. I remember years ago a congregant telling a story, their spouse had passed. And it was sometime after that, I don't remember the time frame, and a good friend was visiting this person, and this person sitting at the kitchen table sobbing, and the other person is basically, they're there, don't be that sad, don't feel that way, don't cry. And this person reared their head up and said, look, this is where I am, this is how I feel, if you can't handle it, there's the door. But it's not up to us to step on somebody else's emotion, to change it, to fix it, right? Can we stand that vulnerable empathy of being with someone in complete crisis, someone who cannot stand up? And can we be in that vulnerable empathy of allowing them to be who they are, allowing them to feel what they feel, and to say whatever they need to be saying in that moment. So in this step, there's a huge amount of self-differentiation, and there's this recognizing and allowing the other, their feeling, their words, their emotions, and whatever way they know to express that. So maybe we can relate to the feelings. I don't know if we ever can fully understand them. I remember my best friend many, many years ago, after her son was killed in a freak accident. I remember one of the first things she said to me was, I want to see someone who's lived through this. You know, we could all love and we could all be empathetic and we could all be sympathetic, but the reality of seeing another parent who lived to tell about it was very important at that time. You know, when we're expressing emotion, I like to call it putting energy in motion. Emotion is energy, right? A feeling is an energy. So we're putting in motion. And I think one of the factors in living in balance of emotional intelligence and with this balanced heart is recognizing the necessity of the flow. We're not meant to hold on to it. We're not meant to push it in there and push it down. We're trained to do that, but we're not spiritually intended to live that way. The nature of life itself is not static. It is progression. It is forward moving. It is energy itself in motion. Now we name emotions, right? That's a good one. That's a bad one. That's a healthy one. That's a not healthy one. And that's up to us and however our system looks. It's good for us to remember emotion in and of itself cannot be bad. Right? It's like we talk about an event. This happened. Is it good, bad, or somewhere in between? It depends on who you talk to. And it depends on their experience with it, their perspective of it. So the emotion in and of itself can't be bad. An emotion is an emotion. Have you noticed emotions are a lot like thoughts? Can anybody remember an emotion you had 4 hours ago? Surprise! Right? But can you call back to a few minutes ago, a few hours ago, and go, oh, that emotion happened, and that's already way down the river, right? We've had 1,500 emotions since then. So when we have the skills to be in touch with our emotion, to name our emotion, to own our emotion, then we have the ability to express it in a non-threatening way. Don't you feel like we've come a long way in bringing balance to our world? And some of us may be able to look back at ourselves, the way we do life, and see some progress in this area. And can we get in touch with that feeling of connection when we've been with someone with an emotional heart, when we've been with someone from that place of a deeper heart? Can you recall what that connection actually feels like? Because that's really the fifth dimension. They call it social skills. And it's about when we're faced with intense and often unbalanced emotional reactions in our own self, in the people around us, in the people we love, in the people we don't know, developing our ability to stay mindful, to stay connected, and to go to that deeper heart is what brings us to living in greater balance. So as we prepare for meditation this morning, I want to share a guided meditation from our material. It's called Touching Your Heart. Let's prepare ourselves. Settle into our seats. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And if it's comfortable to plant both of your feet on the floor, I invite you to do that. And now reach up and place both hands on your heart. Doesn't matter right over left. Both hands over your heart. So as you notice your breath pattern, the inhale and the exhale, imagine that with every inhale, you are feeling your heart with the power of divine love. Your heart. Yourself. With every breath, I can get in touch with the energy, the power of directing divine love toward myself. Breathing into divine love. Breathing out divine love. Resting in the breath of God. I know I am loved. Continue with this energy. I think we all can recall a moment that we've been fully present with someone where we felt nothing but love for that person. See yourself as the recipient of this powerful, tender love. Let's start to get a sense of circulation through our hands and our arms. With every breath in, that energy is moving from our hearts, through our hands, up our arms, and back through our heart center again. Seeing the rhythm, the heartbeat of God. Feeling this powerful force healing us, moving through us. Now expand it with another breath from your heart center throughout every level of being, every level of mind, body, spirit, every nook and cranny of our physical body, head to toe. Breathing into every cell of our being and seeing it light up with the activity of spirit, the power of divine love, vibrating, radiating throughout our whole being. Now you might imagine yourself lying in a meadow, nice soft grass, nice warm sunshine, gentle breeze. Or you might see yourself floating on a body of water, a vast body of water. I am fully supported. I am fully loved. I am the beloved. I am a creation of God mind, perfect and whole, always in progress. Resting in the love of God, I know that I know all is well. Be still and know. And so it is. Amen. Thank you too.